June 4, 1942. Dawn breaks over the vast empty canvas of the Pacific Ocean. 400 miles northwest of a tiny American outpost called Midway Atoll, the rising sun glints off the canopy of a Mitsubishi A6M0 fighter. Inside, a young Japanese pilot, brimming with the confidence of 6 months of unbroken victory, scans the horizon. Below him, the heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the Kido Butai, sails onward, an invincible armada of 4 fleet carriers. Their mission is simple: lure the remnants of the American Pacific Fleet into a final decisive battle and annihilate them. For the pilots and sailors of this fleet, this is not just another battle. It is the culmination of their destiny, the final stroke that will secure the Pacific for the Emperor. The air is thick with the scent of salt and aviation fuel, a perfume of impending victory. Just 6 months prior, the attack on Pearl Harbor had shattered the American sense of security and crippled its naval power in the Pacific. From that moment, the Japanese Empire had advanced with stunning speed, conquering the Philippines, Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, and Burma. The rising sun flew over a vast new empire, and the Allied powers seemed helpless to stop the tide. The Japanese military doctrine, built on the idea of a single decisive battle, or Kantai Kessen, demanded this final confrontation. They believed the Americans, reeling and demoralized, would sail into their elaborate trap at Midway. Their intelligence suggested that only 2 American carriers, Hornet and Enterprise, were operational. Their plan was flawless, their numbers superior, and their crews were the most experienced and battle-hardened naval aviators in the world. They expected a glorious victory, a repeat of Pearl Harbor but at sea, a triumph that would force the United States to sue for peace. But what they encountered was not a demoralized remnant. They met an adversary who had turned their greatest strength, their code of honor and predictability, into their greatest weakness. American codebreakers at Station HYPO in Hawaii, led by the brilliant but unconventional Commander Joseph Rochefort, had achieved the impossible. They had cracked the Japanese naval code, JN-25. While the Japanese believed they were sailing into a trap of their own making, they were in fact sailing into an American ambush. Admiral Chester Nimitz, armed with Rochefort's intelligence, knew their target, their timeline, and their strength. He gambled everything, dispatching his only available carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, to lie in wait. The Japanese expected to fight a cornered, wounded animal. Instead, they found a hunter. The battle began as the Japanese had planned, with a strike on Midway Atoll itself. But the American defenders, forewarned, met them with ferocious anti-aircraft fire and swarms of fighters. The Japanese strike leader, Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, radioed back a fateful message: "There is need for a second attack." On the deck of the flagship Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo faced a critical decision. His planes were returning from Midway, needing to be rearmed and refueled. At the same time, his scout planes had just spotted American ships. Crucially, his reserve aircraft were armed with torpedoes, optimized for attacking ships, not bombs for land targets. In a moment of doctrinal rigidity, Nagumo ordered the torpedoes to be swapped for bombs to hit Midway again. Then, moments later, came the shocking news of an American carrier. The order was reversed: swap the bombs back to torpedoes. On the hangar decks of the Japanese carriers, chaos reigned. Ordnance carts cluttered the decks, bombs and torpedoes were stacked precariously, and fuel lines snaked across the steel floors, a perfect storm of vulnerability. It was in this window of chaos that the American dive bombers arrived. They came in waves. First, the torpedo bombers from the Hornet, Enterprise, and Yorktown. Flying low and slow, they were slaughtered. Torpedo Squadron 8 from the Hornet was wiped out. All 15 planes were shot down, with only a single survivor, Ensign George Gay, left floating in the wreckage-strewn water. They were a sacrifice, but a crucial one. Their desperate suicidal attacks drew the Japanese combat air patrol down to sea level, leaving the skies above the carriers wide open, and then they appeared. High above, like hawks against the sun, were the SBD Dauntless dive bombers from the Enterprise in Yorktown. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, leading the Enterprise Air Group, had been running low on fuel, searching for the Japanese fleet on a hunch. His gamble paid off. At 10:22 a.m., he spotted the white wake of a lone Japanese destroyer and followed it directly to the Kido Butai. In the next 5 minutes, American naval aviation would change the course of world history. The dauntless bombers tipped over into their near-vertical dives, the high-pitched scream of their descent cutting through the roar of battle. For the Japanese sailors below, who had expected only victory, this sound was the shriek of doom. One by one, American bombs found their targets. The carrier Kaga was struck by 4 bombs, erupting into a massive inferno. The flagship Akagi took a single fatal hit that ignited the fuel and munitions on its hangar deck. The Soryu was hit by 3 bombs and was turned into a floating torch. Within 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's finest aircraft carriers, the pride of the fleet, were burning wrecks, their decks littered with the twisted metal of planes that would never fly again. Later that afternoon, planes from the Yorktown, itself now mortally wounded, found the last remaining Japanese carrier, the Hiryu, and sent it to the same fiery grave. Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, perhaps Japan's most brilliant carrier admiral, chose to go down with his ship, a symbolic end to an era of Japanese naval supremacy. The transformation was absolute. The pilots who had awoken that morning as the undisputed masters of the Pacific sky were now swimming in oily water, watching their world burn. The ideology of the single decisive battle had been turned against them. They had sought a Trafalgar, but Midway became their Tsushima in reverse. The sheer industrial might of America, symbolized by the relentless waves of dauntless dive bombers, had proven superior to the samurai spirit on which the Japanese military had prided itself. The Dauntless, a rugged and reliable workhorse, was not as glamorous as the Zero, but it delivered its payload with devastating precision. It was a machine born of a nation that could produce thousands more just like it, a symbol of an abundance and industrial capacity the Japanese could never hope to match. In the aftermath, the balance of power in the Pacific shifted irrevocably. Japan lost its 4 best carriers and over 2,500 experienced personnel, including more than 100 irreplaceable veteran pilots. The United States lost 1 carrier, the Yorktown, but its industrial engine was just beginning to roar to life. The myth of Japanese invincibility was shattered, not by a miracle, but by intelligence, courage, and the cold, hard arithmetic of industrial warfare. The scream of the dauntless dive bomber over Midway was more than just the sound of an attack. It was the sound of a turning tide. It echoed a larger truth, that victory in modern war is not just won by the spirit of the warrior, but by the resilience of a free society, its capacity for innovation, and its sheer overwhelming power to produce and endure. The road from Midway would lead to Guadalcanal, to Iwo Jima, and ultimately to Tokyo Bay. A path forged in the fires of those 5 fateful minutes. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more tales from history. We'll see you next time.